And I say this with no disrespect to any government, but regardless of who is in power, whether it is pro-Hindu or whatever it is, no government has the business of controlling Hindu institutions in any manner.
Yes.
And on that, there can't be any negotiation possible. Once you have these priorities clear, then the society has the ability to bargain and dictate terms and then say, you will be voted back to power provided the Places of Worship Act is repealed by so-and-so period.
You have been following the Mathura and Gyanwapi.
Right.
Yesterday, the Place of Worship Act, an important observation has been made by Mr. Justice Chandrachud,
right,
stating that for determining the place, whether it has to be temple or no, the Place of Worship Act doesn't play any role.
Correct.
But considering the fact that the way Ram Janmabhoomi took it so many years, I wanted to know whether before I retire from my profession, am I able to see Kashi Vishwanath as well as Mathura temple?
Okay. So first question, if it's okay with you, please hand over the mic to him. I just want to have a short conversation with him. How serious are you about seeing this in your lifetime?
Very serious.
Very serious. What are you willing to do for that?
I'm educating amongst my friends and
right,
circle that you need to be decolonized, like
right,
the way what you always preach for.
Right.
And yes, that is the most important thing right now I'm doing.
Okay. Someone chooses to give you free electricity and says, forget about Places of Worship Act. What is your choice?
I wouldn't take that.
Okay. Is it because you're fairly well off?
It's not because of that. I wanted to work hard and earn myself.
Right.
I do not want to live upon the...
Okay. Now the reason why I've asked these questions is this. Now I come from a particular part of the country where the person has offered free electricity. And in the process, under his tenure, he has allowed communal riots to take place.
Yes.
In the capital of the country. To the extent that on the Republic Day, the tricolor was taken off from the Red Fort.
And when the US president was there.
Exactly, right? Now it's easy for me to blame one particular individual, but that individual has been offered as a choice by the society. After all, it's a democracy still. Fortunately or unfortunately, the future will decide. But such an option has been elected with a fairly clear majority twice, where not in some remote part of the country, but in the capital of the country. So what does that tell you about our priorities? So here's the thing. I think it's important to realize two things. One, allow me to use the word Hindu society now. The Hindu society is fundamentally capable of generating wealth. You did that even under the license permit Raj. Liberalization only unleashed your innate potential. It did not create a potential, it liberated that potential. Even in the worst of times, Artha has always been in the hands of this community. That's a fact. If the society manages to retain this sense of self-confidence and also has the ability to take care of its own underprivileged people through its institutions, it will be in a much better position to negotiate its cultural priorities with the government. Otherwise, the government will use freebies and subsidies as a way of undermining the Hindu society. So I am not going to make the secular argument that the subsidy or freebie as a policy is an economic blunder. I am saying it's a civilizational disaster for two reasons. It cultivates a sense of entitlement, makes people lazy, and three, completely makes the society dependent on the state. And when a society becomes completely dependent on the state, it loses its negotiating power on the table, and it loses its ability to dictate terms to the state. That, according to me, is the current state of the Hindu society, while it may think of itself as being a majority, it is in reality an orphan society which has no ability of its own, because from its temples to its cultural institutions are controlled by the government. And I say this with no disrespect to any government, but regardless of who is in power, whether it is pro-Hindu or whatever it is, no government has the business of controlling Hindu institutions in any manner.
Yes.
And on that, there can't be any negotiation possible. Once you have these priorities clear, then the society has the ability to bargain and dictate terms and then say, you will be voted back to power provided the Places of Worship Act is repealed by so-and-so period. That negotiating power has to start. Second, the reason why I asked you this question is, a lot of people who are interested in discussing these topics end up creating anonymous profiles on Facebook because they don't want their identities to be recognized, because they're afraid of repercussions in the office spaces, in schools and whatnot. The day you don't feel the need to create an anonymous profile to express these thoughts is the day you have seriously expressed your intention to see this through. 3, I said this a few days ago in Chennai in a talk, which is that no institution in this country is free from the influence of public opinion, and the seriousness of an institution towards your cause is, to put it in mathematical terms, directly proportional to your expression of seriousness. Whether it is the judiciary or the executive or the legislature, you have to show that you mean business and this matters to you. Then they take it seriously. I would assume that the growing degree of awareness within the Hindu society is perhaps the reason for a certain change of tune on the part of certain actors and stakeholders, which is good, which is fantastic. This is exactly what we've been waiting for. Now, as far as the legality of what has happened is concerned, I'm giving you ammunition which you can use in your private Facebook discussions and Twitter discussions. So here is the astra I'm giving to you. Everybody says that because there is a Places of Worship Act, the very act of undertaking a survey is illegal. That's been the standard, and dare I say, the stupid argument that's been presented in public domain. According to me, that's an unlettered, ignorant argument, because nobody has read the legislation. Anyone who says this does not understand language at all in the first place. Forget whichever script. There is a specific section 4 which has a subsection 3 under which there are exceptions carved out, which clearly say that any exercise that is undertaken within the meaning of, let's say, for the purposes of archaeology, or to protect it as a heritage monument, is exempt from the application of the Places of Worship Act. Now the question is, if the Act bars the change of religious character, what is the purpose of ascertaining the religious character? Well, the purpose of ascertaining religious character is to know what happened, what is the history of the place. And second, the Act is not permanent according to me. The Act is certainly not permanent according to me, because what the legislature gives, it can take away. Now, during the Ram Janmabhoomi movement, the original position of the other side, people constantly ask the Hindus, why aren't you fighting for hospitals? Why are you fighting for temples? Surprisingly, that question was never put to the other side. And it's not as if they were fighting for the property to build a hospital later. Right? So this question needs to be reframed. The first argument of the other side was, there was no destruction, there was no temple. The second argument was, if at all there was a temple, well, it must have collapsed because of an earthquake, and using the material of the temple, the subsequent structure was built. All these questions were put to rest after the Allahabad High Court directed an archaeological excavation, and then the facts were crystal clear, they were evident. I think what is happening in Kashi is a peaceful way of achieving the same objective, and fortunately a legal and a statutory way of getting the job done. According to me, the Archaeological Survey of India must undertake this activity without the need for a court direction across 40,000 sites which are currently under occupation. The popular misconception is that this is a Hindu versus Muslim argument. What most people don't realize is for the people who have lived in the Konkan, it is also a Christian argument. Because of the Portuguese Inquisition, all the pies that you see in Karnataka and the pies that you see in Kerala have been driven out of Konkan, thanks to the Portuguese Inquisition. There's a fantastic book on this issue by this gentleman called A.K. Priolkar, called The Goan Inquisition. Please read it. The number of temples that were destroyed. Most people think that the British man was the first colonizer of this country. No, it was the Portuguese who was the first colonizer. Madras was founded by the Portuguese, as it existed then. What exists as the St. Thomas Mount Basilica was the original Kapalishwar temple. And the Puranas identify this temple as being on the side of the shore, not within the city. It had to be pushed within the city because just as Kashi, the Shivalinga had to be carried from the shore to the heart of the city in Mylapore to protect it from desecration and destruction. So which is why the book I have tried to say 2 waves of colonization and invasion at the very least. So for the Places of Worship Act to go, I think you must build on the existing momentum and ensure that it becomes a specific issue in the election manifesto for the state as well as for 2024. Only then it achieves a certain degree of seriousness. I hope that answers the question. Yes.